The story begins with a young boy named Bernard Garrett, shining shoes on a dusty street corner in a small Texas town. The year is 1939. America is deeply divided by race, and for a black child in the South, opportunity is a locked door. But Bernard has found a crack in that door, and he's about to slip through it in a way nobody expects. He doesn't just shine shoes. He listens. Every banker, every businessman, every wealthy customer who sits in his chair talks freely in front of him, because to them, he's invisible. And Bernard soaks it all in: mortgage rates, property values, the language of money, scribbling it into a battered notebook the moment his workday ends. One afternoon, crouched near a bank window, he overhears something that changes everything. The exact method bankers use to calculate the value of real estate. It's a small piece of knowledge, but in Bernard's hands, it's a spark. That spark is almost snuffed out immediately. A white chauffeur catches him eavesdropping and drags him away, hissing a threat to report him to his father. That night, his father discovers the notebook. Page after page of numbers, calculations, observations far beyond what any child should know. He's stunned. He's proud. And he's terrified, because he knows a hard truth. In this world, brilliance isn't enough to save a black boy from the color of his skin. Fast forward 15 years. It's 1954. Bernard, now a grown man with a wife and young son, has saved enough to leave Texas behind. They head west, chasing the promise of California. A place that feels, on paper at least, a little more forgiving. They move in with his wife's uncle in Los Angeles, crammed into a small room, paying what they can. The uncle has a plan for Bernard. Get a steady factory job, keep your head down, survive. But Bernard isn't interested in surviving. He wants to build something. He tells his family he intends to make his living in real estate, and the uncle can't help but laugh in his face. That night, as Bernard tucks in his son, the uncle turns to his niece and tries to talk sense into her. Maybe she should pick up shifts at the local club to help make ends meet until her husband figures things out. But she doesn't flinch. She tells him flatly that her husband is no ordinary man. He's a genius, and one day the world will see it too. Bernard overhears the exchange and makes a quiet promise. He will get her and their boy out of that cramped little room, and soon. The very next morning, while driving his cousin to work, Bernard strikes up a conversation with a friendly, easygoing white kid named Matt. It's a passing moment, a joke about who's rich and who isn't, but it plants a seed that will matter far more later on. Bernard throws himself into studying the Los Angeles property market, hunting for a deal, trying to talk sellers down. Eventually, he finds it. A rundown apartment building that needs serious repair work, priced right at the edge of what he can afford, if he spends every last dollar just acquiring it, with nothing left over for renovations. His wife is baffled when she learns the building sits in an all-white neighborhood. Why there? Bernard's answer is simple, almost cold in its logic. The black neighborhoods are already packed to bursting. Expansion isn't a choice, it's inevitable. He's not asking permission. He's getting ahead of where the city is already heading. Still short on cash, his wife offers a solution. She knows someone with money. She takes Bernard to a jazz club run by a sharp, larger-than-life local figure named Joe Morris, a man of wealth, charisma, and hard-earned status in the black community. But their first meeting goes badly. Joe can't resist needling the stiff, all-business Bernard, and Bernard storms out, insulted, refusing to even consider taking money from a man he sees as reckless and vain. His wife tries to reassure him. Joe looks intimidating, sure, but underneath it he's steady, connected, and even friendly with the mayor. Bernard isn't swayed. Not yet. With no investor, Bernard goes straight to the building's owner, a shrewd Irish businessman, to negotiate directly. The asking price is $40,000. Bernard pushes hard to get it down to $30,000 and fails. Instead, he proposes something clever. Pay $30,000 up front, and the remaining $10,000 only once the building is fully rented out. The Irishman is impressed by the audacity, even amused, noting there's an untapped market of black doctors, lawyers, and teachers desperate to escape overcrowded neighborhoods, a market nobody else is chasing. But being impressed isn't the same as being convinced. He turns Bernard down. Before walking away, though, Bernard clocks two details: the name of a bank on the man's desk calendar and the name of his personal account manager. That single observation becomes his next move. That same day, Bernard walks into the bank and asks to speak with that very manager. The secretary lies to his face, pretending not to know the name. A thin, humiliating brush-off dressed up as politeness. Bernard doesn't budge. He waits outside for hours after closing time, and when the manager finally steps out, Bernard lays out the entire deal on the sidewalk, refusing to be dismissed. That evening, just as Bernard is ready to give up hope, his phone rings. It's the Irishman, and he's furious. Word got back to him that Bernard used his name to try to secure financing without permission. It's a stunning breach of etiquette, and for a moment it seems like Bernard has burned the one bridge he had. Then comes the twist. The Irishman has decided to back him anyway. He'll personally guarantee the loan. Something about Bernard's relentless nerve has convinced him this young man is going somewhere. Bernard is overcome. This is the first real door that's ever opened for him. To celebrate, his wife drags him to Joe Morris's club again. Joe approaches, testing him with the same needling humor as before, but this time there's real respect underneath it. Joe admits something telling. He loves watching black men succeed, and he sees that fire in Bernard. Not long after, Bernard and his cousin start fixing up the newly purchased building. An elderly white tenant spots them working and immediately assumes they're intruders, until Bernard reveals he's the actual owner. She refuses to believe it, calling the police, who arrive expecting to find trespassers. Bernard calmly produces the deed. The officers, embarrassed, leave with a half-hearted apology. That night, Bernard moves his own family into one of the units, a quiet, defiant statement. The elderly tenant, unwilling to live near black neighbors, packs up and leaves the very next day. Her unit doesn't stay empty long. A respectable, well-off black woman moves in almost immediately, and the building starts to fill with exactly the kind of tenants Bernard predicted. The Irishman, delighted by how things are unfolding, proposes something bigger, a full partnership. He'll use his reputation and his white face to close deals with sellers who'd never sit across a table from a black buyer. Bernard, meanwhile, will work the numbers behind the scenes, negotiating over the phone, running the calculations, structuring every deal. Together, they start buying up properties across the region, and the business takes off. Bernard is finally able to move his wife into a proper home of her own. But every rise has its fall. The Irishman dies suddenly, and everything Bernard built on their partnership is thrown into chaos. His widow wants nothing to do with a black business partner. She offers to buy out Bernard's half of the properties, at a fraction of what it's actually worth. And here's the gut punch. Their entire partnership was built on a handshake. No paperwork. No proof. Legally, Bernard has almost no leverage at all. He tries to find a witness, anyone who can confirm the terms of the original deal. He goes to the bank manager who once refused to even acknowledge him. But that manager is already working with the widow now, and shuts the door in Bernard's face. Walking out, defeated, Bernard notices something on his way to the exit. A directory listing every company renting office space in that very building, mostly banks. And that's when the idea hits him. Not just to fight for what he's owed, but to own the building itself. If he controls the building, nobody in it can ever ignore him again. To make it happen, he needs serious capital, more than he has alone. So Bernard swallows his pride and goes back to Joe Morris, the man he once dismissed. Joe already owns commercial property in black neighborhoods and understands the market cold. But buying into downtown Los Angeles, white territory, untouched by any black owner in the city's history, is a different level of risk. Joe isn't sure it's worth it. Bernard makes his pitch. With the two of them literally sitting inside the building as landlords, no bank inside it will dare refuse their business. And as an added bonus, they'll have inside access to real estate data that gives them an edge on every future deal. It's enough to win Joe over. There's just one problem. No seller will do business with two black men. They won't even take the meeting. So they need a white face to front the deal. They turn to Matt, the easygoing kid from years back. He's terrified at the idea of playing a role that big, and honestly, Joe doesn't think he has what it takes either. But Bernard sees potential in him, potential that just needs shaping. There's a quieter moment that seals Matt's decision. A waitress he went to school recognizes him and treats him with newfound admiration once she learns he's being brought in as a real estate partner. That taste of respect, of being somebody, is enough to push Matt to say yes. What follows is a crash course in reinvention. Joe teaches Matt golf and how to charm a room full of wealthy men. Bernard tries to teach him the actual math behind property valuation, multipliers, cap rates, vacancy projections, but quickly realizes he has to start from the very basics. Progress is painfully slow at first, and Joe starts to doubt they'll ever get Matt ready in time. Then something surprising happens. Matt can't do the math in his head the normal way. But he has an extraordinary memory. Instead of learning the formulas, he simply memorizes every possible number, every combination, every response, word for word. It's a strange workaround, but it works. Joe arranges a chance encounter on an elite golf course with Charles Renault, the wealthy owner of the downtown building they're targeting. Bernard preps Matt relentlessly beforehand. Every negotiation angle, every price point. And Matt, leaning entirely on memorized numbers, walks into the meeting and delivers a jaw-dropping performance. He rattles off vacancy projections and revenue calculations so precise that Renault is floored. His own accountant with a calculator can't keep pace. Matt even points out a seasonal lighting detail about vacancy rates that catches Renault completely off guard. By the end of the negotiation, Matt has pushed Renault's asking price down from $25 million to a fraction of that, and forced him into a deal that heavily favors Bernard and Joe. It's a massive win, and it's only the beginning. With their credibility and financing now wide open, the trio expands aggressively into white neighborhoods that were previously off-limits to black buyers. Eventually, they control an astonishing 177 buildings, some housing over 100 units each. Without ever announcing it publicly, they become one of the quiet forces chipping away at housing segregation across Los Angeles, so influential that they even host the sitting Vice President of the United States in one of their buildings. Along the way, Matt marries the very waitress whose admiration first pulled him into this world. By 1963, Bernard is a wealthy, successful man, and he decides to go back to his small Texas hometown to see his aging father. Nothing has changed there. The same rigid segregation, the same rules. His father tells him something quietly devastating. He doesn't believe California is truly any different, just better disguised. Walking through town the next day in an expensive suit, Bernard's son is confused by the stares from white passersby. His father has to explain that outside California, this world still runs on the old rules. They pass the very bank where Bernard once shined shoes. He asks a young black boy sitting in his old spot how much a shine costs, and the boy tells him, plainly, that he only shines shoes for white customers. It's a gut punch of a full-circle moment, and it lights a fire in Bernard. That night, he tells his wife his next move: buy a Texas bank outright, so black families finally have access to fair loans instead of the predatory terms designed to keep them locked out. His wife knows there's no talking him out of it once his mind is made up. Back in Los Angeles, Joe initially resists the idea. This isn't really a business play anymore. It's a mission, and missions don't always pay. But once it's clear Bernard is doing this with or without him, Joe climbs aboard. There's a catch, though. Under Texas law, black men can't even walk into that bank except as staff. So once again, they need Matt to be the face, with Joe posing as his driver to keep an eye on things. They negotiate to buy the bank from its aging owner, Robert Florence, on one condition. His son, Florence Jr., stays on as a credit officer, and the father retains a 20% stake. The deal seems set, until Florence Jr. starts asking pointed questions about who's really behind Matt. Told simply that his partners are too busy to attend, he lets it go for now, but he doesn't stop watching. Bernard quietly reaches out to local black church leaders, asking them to identify trustworthy borrowers in their congregations, and to keep the arrangement confidential. Loans start flowing to black families and small business owners for the first time, and the community begins to grow because of it. But Florence Jr. isn't satisfied. He starts digging, discovers the truth about who's approving these loans, and follows Matt to his secret meetings with Bernard. Meanwhile, at home, Matt's wife is furious. He was promised ownership, not just a manager's salary, and she's tired of playing second fiddle to men who technically still call the shots. Matt promises her their next acquisition will be entirely his to run. Florence Jr. eventually confronts Bernard directly, breaking into his home to threaten exposure. If the town finds out a black-owned operation is behind the bank, panicked white depositors will pull their money and collapse it entirely. He also reveals that a surprise federal audit has just been moved up 2 quarters early. No coincidence, clearly his doing. Pushed by his wife, Matt convinces Bernard and Joe to buy a second, smaller bank. One he'll run completely on his own, shifting the riskier black community loans there to protect the main bank. Bernard is hesitant. He doesn't trust the operation to run smoothly without oversight. But Matt, desperate to finally be the owner rather than just the front man, pushes hard enough that the partners relent, with Bernard's wife quietly working as a janitor inside the new bank just to keep watch. Bernard leaves Matt with strict instructions: review every single loan carefully and only work with their trusted lawyer. Matt, eager to prove himself, ignores the second instruction and hires a lawyer recommended, suspiciously, by Florence Jr. himself. Under pressure and overconfident, Matt rushes through the loan paperwork without properly checking it. Then the walls close in fast. White customers start pulling money from the main bank after hearing rumors it's been lending to black families. At nearly the same moment, a federal examiner shows up, not for the main bank, but for Matt's smaller one, triggered by another anonymous tip. Bernard, disguised in a janitor's uniform, tries to help explain the books, but the damage is already done. The small bank is holding loans far bigger than it's legally allowed to carry. Panicking, Matt admits he never actually checked the details of the loan package. He trusted the wrong lawyer, on the wrong recommendation and missed the problem completely. Everyone realizes, all at once, that Florence Jr. engineered this entire trap. Desperate to save the main bank, Bernard and Joe decide the smaller bank has to be sold off immediately. But Matt, unwilling to lose the one thing that finally made him feel like an owner, secretly starts buying the bad loans back using the main bank's money instead, a move that nearly guarantees disaster. When Bernard and Joe find out and rush to stop him, it's already too late. Federal regulators storm in, revoke the bank's license on the spot, and place it into receivership. Walking out, Bernard, Joe, and Matt are arrested by the FBI. What follows is a Senate hearing designed to make an example of them. Not really about justice, but about tightening banking laws to make sure something like this can never happen again. Privately, government officials make it painfully clear: cooperate, blame Bernard, and walk away clean, or fight it and risk decades in prison. Matt, terrified, breaks under the pressure and testifies that he was manipulated the whole time, painting himself as a puppet controlled by his partners. Then it's Bernard's turn. He's offered an easy way out too: confess to exploiting a legal loophole, and the government gets its excuse to quietly close it. But if he dares to bring up racial discrimination instead, he's told flatly, he'll be looking at real prison time. Bernard chooses the harder path. He shows up to the hearing in his old janitor's uniform, the exact disguise black men were forced to wear just to legally enter their own bank, and delivers a searing, unforgettable statement about a country that claims equality under the Constitution while systematically excluding an entire race from the American dream. It's a powerful moment. It's also, in the eyes of the Senate, an unforgivable one. The government seizes their assets. An all-white Texas jury convicts Bernard and Joe of misappropriating bank funds, sentencing them to 3 years in federal prison. Matt walks free. Florence Jr. buys back the original bank for a fraction of what Bernard and Joe originally paid his father for it. A final, bitter insult. 3 years later, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act, finally making it illegal to deny housing based on race, religion, or gender, a law shaped, in part, by the very case that destroyed these men's freedom. When Bernard is finally released, Joe and his wife are waiting for him. There's laughter, relief. But his wife can't understand what exactly they're celebrating, since on paper, they're both bankrupt now. That's when Bernard reveals the twist he'd been sitting on the whole time. Before that first Senate hearing, Matt had warned him privately that he'd been forced to testify against them. So Bernard asked him for one final favor: quietly liquidate part of their remaining assets and use it to buy 2 homes in the Bahamas. One for Bernard, one for Joe. While the government stripped them of everything they built, they'd already secured their landing. Bernard and Joe walk away not just free, but set for life. A quiet, satisfying final move from a man who spent his entire life outsmarting a system built to keep him down. This story is based on true events. The real life of Bernard Garrett, a man who fought his way from a shoeshine stand in segregated Texas to owning more property than most companies do today, using nothing but sharp instincts, relentless preparation, and the courage to walk through doors that were never meant to open for him. If this story moved you even a little, if you found yourself rooting for Bernard, holding your breath during that Senate hearing, or getting genuinely angry at Florence Jr., do me a favor. Don't just scroll past. Drop a comment below and tell me which moment hit you hardest. It costs nothing, and honestly, it's the only way I know this content is actually reaching people who care. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Every single video like this one takes real time and effort to research, write, and put together. And the only reason this channel keeps going is because people like you decide to stick around. I'll see you in the next video.